Good evening and welcome. We're here tonight to hear from Otis Library, their esteemed leader and board members, I guess. The floor is yours.
Do you want to come up to the...
There are microphones
To
on
the
the table. Please speak into them clearly.
There was one light item for the budget. It's under miscellaneous, and it's on page 113. Okay, thank you.
Shall I begin with an opening
Please.
statement?
Yes, please. Again, please use the microphone.
Okay, thank you very much. I think as you know, at this juncture, we have been recommended for a $990,000 item in the budget, which would be an increase of approximately $45,000 over our current allocation. That is somewhat less than we had originally applied for, but it is certainly an improvement over where we were, and that is much appreciated. I think we can say that it's, from our perspective, I think no one will contradict me that that's certainly looks like a step in the right direction for us and very helpful in bridging the gap between expenses and income, although it doesn't quite fill the gap. Chuck, did you want to say a few words about the gap?
The gap, for the past several years, can you guys hear me? For the past several years, Otis Library has been sustaining an operating loss. This year, we projected originally about a $238,000 operating loss, and during the course of the year, Bob and staff have made some cuts, and it appears we're going to be somewhere in the $175,000 loss for the year, which is, and it's good and bad news. Good news is it's better than we budgeted. Bad news is it's still an operating loss, and it takes all our endowment income to cover that, along with some endowment principal. So a $40,000 increase from $950 to $990 would reduce that, but I have to anticipate that there are going to be some increases in expenses for next year. I can't tell what they are now. We haven't started putting the budget together yet for next year at Otis.
And I failed to introduce everybody who's here, and I shouldn't make an assumption that everybody knows who all of the members of our group are. Chuck Seaman, some of you may know, he's our treasurer. Nick Fortson is the vice president of our board, and John Iavino is our president. I think if there are specific things that you would like to ask about this would be a good time to do it. It's better than listening to a long monologue from me, I guarantee you.
Members, questions? Yes, Alderwoman Burnham.
Hi, thank you for coming in. Just a couple of questions. What cuts did you have to make? Where did you have to scale back over the last couple of years?
I think it would be easier to enumerate, pardon me. I think it'd be easier to enumerate where we haven't cut. We have reduced salaries, for example, significantly. When we began the fiscal year, our estimated salary figure was approximately $775,000. At the end of this fiscal year, it will be approximately $730,000. That's all based on staff reductions. We don't have very many places that we can make further reductions in either in services, benefits. In fact, as Chuck alluded to, one of the areas where we did have to transfer money from the endowment was to cover materials, because that is, well, I guess that's the thing that people most closely associate with a library, our materials, books, etc. So we took $49,000 out of the endowment in order to cover those expenses. But all the lines that we projected, and salaries would be the single biggest one, we have reduced to the point now where, anecdotally, if we have somebody call in sick, then someone has to be called away from another job or position in order to fill that spot. I did a quick calculation that I thought might be of interest. At the beginning of this fiscal year, in our first payroll, we compensated staff for 1,485 hours. In the most recent payroll, that was down to 1,362. So that means that somebody who is actually supposed to be doing something else has to fill in if there's a void because of illness, vacation, etc. Now, that may make tactical sense. It doesn't make strategic sense because you are taking people who are doing other important tasks and assigning them to different jobs. So their jobs are not necessarily going to be completed in a timely fashion. It's also, you reach a point where it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're not able to provide the services you used to provide, ergo, the argument could be made, then why do you need more money? You're not providing what you used to be able to provide. You're not doing as much as you used to do. But it's circular. We could just get to the point where we can't do more. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, somewhat.
I'm sorry, are there other questions? Am I butting it?
If you'd like to respond.
No.
Oh, are there other questions then?
Yes. Can you elucidate for us and the public, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about your endowments, the restrictions or lack of restriction, and how they can be used and how they, because there are a lot of questions about can't they just use their endowments to fill whatever gaps that they have?
So our endowment totals about $4.5 million. Half of that, though, is restricted. We can't touch the principal. So that limits the rest of the endowment, about $2.25 million, is if we had, well, not if we had to, we did have to. We went into the principal of that endowment to the tune of about $100,000 this year. Together, the endowment provides about $150,000 in income, and that is after fees that we have to pay investment managers. So if we lose in excess of $140,000, $150,000, we have to go into the principal of the endowment, as we did this year, to cover the balance of our operating loss. But yeah, about $2.25 million is restricted, and it's also restricted to how much we can take out in income during the course of the year. And that was a gift from the Sears family, we call it the Sears Trust. And that's the restricted endowment that we have. Answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And just one more thing. First of all, I just want to say that nobody questions the value that the library brings to the community. The services you provide, the classes, the enrichment, the education, the community center function, nobody questions that. So thank you for being in our community. One thing that has come up throughout this budget process is we have a number of line items that we fund that are in city departments. So the matter of transparency and oversight has come up, and I was just curious if moving forward, as we ask of NCDC and other programs that we fund, would it be possible to provide quarterly reports or something like that so that we know how our money is being spent and allocated?
Yes.
Yeah, no, because I think that's helpful. We've implemented a quarterly report this year for all of the departments, looking at their key performance indicators, their metrics, and I think it's important for the public to know, as well as the council to understand how we're investing our money.
Be happy to do that.
Just to quickly follow up on that, being new to this process and system, when we were meeting earlier and talking about it, I didn't realize it was just a line item number that you saw for Otis Library. And you're basing what you're going to vote on and what we do on a line item without having quarterly reports. So absolutely, we would be more than willing to do that, because we feel once you get into the quarterly reports and you see where we're doing things and how we're doing it,
Yeah.
I think you'll be happy and you'll be surprised. So absolutely would be happy to do that.
Thank you, because that has been a very helpful process for us moving forward throughout the year, looking at how departments are doing, and with such a large chunk, which is significantly larger than even some of our other departments, I think that would be really helpful.
And again, I just want to touch upon what Chuck has said about we're taking money from the endowment. Some of that is income, but we've actually touched the principal also. And because of that, we become a lot more conservative. Again, when you have an endowment fund, you want a lot of that to be in the stock market. So we had to pull money out of the stock market and put it into fixed income. Now, fixed income is, we won't have major appreciation in the portfolio. So as long as we're conservative and we're pulling from principal, it's going to get worse each year thereafter. So, you know, the ideal thing would be to have most of the money in the stock market, but it's not. And because we had to become conservative in our approach because of the cuts that we've had to make.
Thank you. Other questions, members? Alderwoman Philbrick?
Yes, I'm a little confused, Mr. Fowler. You said 990, but in the budget it's 995, which is what is the correct figure?
995.
And where is your budget? Where is the budget? Where is your budget document that shows how your money is spent? I think last year we asked you. Okay, it would be helpful to have a copy of that. I mean,
Okay. So what Bob has is the year-to-date financial statement through
no, I'm
March.
looking for your budget.
Excuse me?
I'm looking for the budget.
Just the budget.
Line item budget, salaries, utilities, materials, health insurance, miscellaneous. When you come to us and ask us for $1 million, if you come to your bank and I'm asking you for $1 million, you're going to ask me for a bucket load of documentation. So I'm looking for the budget.
Are there other questions? I'll go make copies of this for everyone.
Well,
Bill?
it ties our hands that.
I understand. Bill, could you take over the?
I can go make copies.
Oh, okay. I'm happy to do it myself. Oh, I'm sorry. That's easier.
We do provide this to the city. It is provided when asked for the funding information.
Well, but so if I hadn't asked for it now, when would it have been presented to us?
It was provided to you last November when we made our request for funding. We put together a request that indicates all the line items in the budget.
I've never seen it. Which members of the council have seen it?
No, it wasn't forwarded to us.
No.
It's requested, it was requested by, I believe, a letter from the city manager and the controller.
As I said, perhaps the city manager can. Again, and I'm not trying to be, I am, you're coming
It's fair,
to us
it's fair.
asking for $1 million. I need to know what you need this money for, other than salaries and operating expenses. I need more information. But we have plenty of time to get that. We're not voting on it tonight, so.
Are there other questions? Yes, Alderman DeLucia.
My first question is, could you talk a little bit about the services that you provide through the library? Because we all know that that the library is more than just a library. We've had these conversations, but can we just talk in general, maybe that, top 6, top 10 services you provide to the community?
Sure. Well, there are a number, and as you alluded to, we are doing more than the library. We're also this, for all intent and purpose, the city's community center. What you're paying to support is the library portion of it, not the community center part. We take that on because there are gaps that we can identify. There are, for example, English as a second language, citizenship. We've also, in the most recent iteration of the budget, included 2 new programs with NFA, one with their special education class, one with the ACES program, which is comprised of students who have difficulty in a classroom environment. And we do that specifically because we recognize from our surveys and our polls and interactions with the student body that those are areas where there's a paucity of instruction. We're doing this, those are all grant-funded programs. Anything of that nature outside of ordinary operations, we try to provide with a grant. In addition to that, you'll find 20 to 25 students being tutored there every Saturday. I could go on and on. We have our story hours. We have, which are essential to reading readiness. We do outreach programs both with several preschools. We also do outreach with our senior citizens. They are those who can no longer access the library's facilities, get homebound delivery. And most recently, we have extended those to Chase Manor. All of these things we do as the composition of our audience and the composition of our community need changes. If we had the wherewithal to do it, we'd be working with a specific group within our New Americans community on outreach, English language outreach, but we do not have the money necessary to do that.
So as a follow-up to that, what services would you be able to provide or are not going to be able to provide? However, when I asked the question, because of the difference of $199,000 between your budget requests and what's in our proposed budget.
Right. Well, I'm not going to get into specifics because I can't. But it will, the most reasonable areas to look at, since we can't look at salaries and benefits, would be programs, it would be materials, and it would be hours. There's really there aren't any other places that we can reduce our operating budget. But those are the places that we would be most likely to have to make. We'd have to make remediations to what we provide in the way of services to the public.
So what you're saying then is that the additional $199,000 was not for some new initiative or new wide-ranging programs. It was really to maintain the programs that you're currently trying to provide to the community.
It's to allow us to continue to operate in a manner that I think people expect from a nationally recognized library at break even. It's not to make money, but it's also, I think, is it fair to say, it's so we don't have to invest, that we'll have something to grow the corpus of the endowment, because now everything that we make, we spend. Everything that we make in the endowment, in the terms of income, is expended.
Thank you.
Yes, further questions? Alderman Nash?
I just have a quick question. Just looking at this line item stuff, one thing just popped out at me. is the parking, staff parking for $10,000, who are you paying that to?
Paying it to you.
Okay, that's all I want to know. You have to get I'm trying to help you here. I'm on your side.
It's a sore spot with.
No, it's, I got it.
$10,000 a year for staff parking. We pay it to the city of Norwich, and then we pay it to two other entities who I'm not going to name because I like to keep my parking spaces.
So how much of the 10,000 is going to the city?
3 or 4, Bill, I'd have to check.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Other questions? Alderman Gould?
Thank you for being here tonight, gentlemen. You don't list, unless I'm missing it in here, your interest income or what you do, what you raise every year from fundraising? An evening with the author?
Yes, that's the annual fund. That's $75,000.
Okay.
Yeah, and bank interest is there as well.
So $3,500 on your $4.5 million endowment? I think you
no,
need to
this
go
is-
speak to Josh
We-
and find out how you make more money.
We don't, that's not, investment income is not part of an operating statement. It's transferred below the line.
This is not a budget.
Okay, so your investment income,
Our investment income is about $150,000 a year, 150,000. And as Nick indicated, we changed our endowment from one of growth in income to strictly income. And that was so that we could cover the operating losses.
okay, and in your annual fund, the $80,000 in the annual fund, that's from what activities?
That's from our annual appeal, that's from evening with an author. Those would be the principal sources, those two. And any other unrestricted gift that would accrue to us as well, that somebody might make as an independent donation.
Okay, and you list here that you get about $1,000 a year in grants to run your programs.
No, we get, that's an operating grant, which comes from the state and is based on a formula they have for reimbursements for services that we provide, but that's as much as we get.
So that's the only grant that you,
It's any grant that's restricted would be accounted for separately. It's not considered an operating expense.
okay, but how much income do you derive, or how much grant money do you derive in a year to pay for the citizenship classes, or English as a second language classes, or?
In order to, the independent money that would come for those could run between $15,000 and $20,000 a year, but they are for a particular project, so we can't use them in our operating budget and still be able to report to the funder what the specific amounts are, so we.
Right, I understand that it may be specific, that you get a $5,000 grant to do X program.
Yes.
And the classes that you, or the arrangement that you have with NFA for special ed ACES program, does NFA reimburse you for any of that?
No, that's all grant funded.
That's all grant funded as well?
It is,
And is that within the 15 to 20?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, Alderman DeLucia.
So a follow-up to that, and so your annual fund is your fundraising? So you're projecting it to be $80,000, but you can't guarantee that is what it will be. Agreed?
I never say for certain, but this year we did have a good year. We had budgeted 75, and we have already reached that figure.
So, yeah, so I get it, you're basing that on historical data, that's the best you can do is a projection, right? But what I'm getting at is, I also see under your expenses that you have fundraising expenses anticipated of $18,000. So really, you're gonna net, if you hit both of those targets, you're only gonna net $62,000. That's correct. Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Into any wrap-up statements or follow-up? We appear to be done.
Sure, just a couple of comments. First of all, thank you obviously for the time this evening. Learning experience for some of us. I think it's important now that you have the actual budget line item by line item in front of you. It's easier to look at and make evaluations. And your request to have quarterly reports, we will make sure that happens because transparency is the way to do it, and you can see what we have. Appreciate the comments on your recognition of Otis Library is more than a library. We were very grateful that many of you had time to spend with us at the library to learn about the programs that are offered. Something to remember is that Otis Library is a champion in the city of Norwich. For the programs it runs, for the downtown economic development that it supports, people coming downtown. We need to begin thinking about supporting our champions, not making it difficult for champions to continue to be champions. It's hard to do that year after year. It's been very difficult not getting the proper funding and having to dip into the endowment, but Otis is a champion, and we ask you to continue to support champions, and we can be better. And it'll be like the Yankees will win number 28, and life will be good, but thank you.
Yankees and Red Sox territory.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just one last comment from me. You know, as you go through the budget, I don't want you to lose sight that Otis Library serves two important demographics in this town. Number one, senior citizens. You know, if you go to Otis Library, there's always something happening for a senior citizen. It's a safe place for them to go. It's a welcoming place. So that's one demographic. You know, City of Norwich, we're looking for young families, all right? So if you go to Otis Library, you're gonna see where families can take their kids. It's a safe place. It's a good, healthy place. It supplements what happens with the school systems. So as you go through this budget, and you're nickel and dime, that's what you have to keep in mind. It's a good, wholesome place, and it gives the city of Norwich a good reputation in the region.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.